My name is Jessica Wilson. I'm 32 years old, and 8 years ago, my father stole my invention and sold it for a fraction of its worth. Today, that same technology forms the foundation of a $5 billion company, my company. This is the story of how I lost everything, and then took it all back. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, hit that like button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. The mashed potatoes tasted like betrayal. "We're selling your invention," Dad announced casually between bites of pot roast, as if he were commenting on the weather. "The papers are being drawn up tomorrow." The dining room fell silent. My fork clattered against fine china, my mother's special occasion set. Apparently, selling my future warranted the good dishes. "What are you talking about?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad dabbed his mouth with a napkin, the perfect picture of composure. "The neural interface algorithm. Greenwood Technologies is offering $250,000. It's a fair price, especially for something created by a 19-year-old. My mother smiled tightly, her eyes avoiding mine. "Isn't that wonderful, Jessica? Your father worked so hard to make this happen." I stared at them, stunned. The neural interface I'd developed in my MIT dorm room wasn't just some school project. It was revolutionary, a way to translate neural signals into digital commands with unprecedented accuracy. I'd spent 2 years perfecting it, sleeping 3 hours a night, missing parties, relationships, and most of my college experience. "You can't sell it," I said, feeling like I was drowning. "It's not yours to sell." Dad's expression hardened, his investment banker mask slipping into place. "Actually, it is. The development happened under my roof, using equipment I paid for during your breaks. And you're still a dependent on my taxes." He slid a document across the table. "Remember this? The agreement we signed when I funded your lab setup." I remembered. Dad had insisted on a contract when he purchased $30,000 worth of equipment for my research. I'd barely glanced at it, grateful for his support, never imagining he'd use it against me. "You need to think about your future, not some pipe dream," he continued, his tone shifting to the patronizing one he reserved for explaining adult decisions to his children. "Take the money, finish your degree, and get a real job. This deal is happening." "A real job?" I repeated, my shock turning to anger. "Do you have any idea what this algorithm could be worth? The applications for medical technology alone are speculative at best," he cut me off. "Greenwood's offer is real. It's on the table now." I looked to my mother, then my younger sister Ashley, hoping for support. They avoided my gaze, familiar with Dad's financial wisdom. A successful investment banker, Robert Wilson made decisions that were never questioned in our Westchester County home. "Mom?" I pleaded. She fidgeted with her napkin. "Your father knows what's best, dear. $250,000 is a lot of money for someone your age. This isn't about the money." I pushed my chair back from the table. "This is my work, my future. You can't just sell it like it's the family car." "That's enough, Jessica," Dad said sternly. "The decision has been made. This emotional outburst only proves you're not ready for the business world." I stood up, trembling. "You have no idea what I'm ready for." That night changed everything. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there: my father's sudden interest in my research, his questions about patent applications, his insistence on reading my lab notes. But I'd been too caught up in the work itself to notice. The neural interface algorithm wasn't something I stumbled upon by accident. It was the result of countless hours hunched over textbooks and computers in MIT's computer science lab. My sophomore year roommate Sarah used to joke that she lived with a ghost. "Seriously, Jess," she'd say, finding me at my desk at 4 a.m. yet again, "normal people sleep. Are you even human anymore?" I'm close to a breakthrough, I'd mumble, eyes never leaving the screen. The signal interpretation is almost clean enough for real-time commands. What I was attempting had never been done before, creating an algorithm that could interpret neural signals with enough precision to control complex digital systems. Existing interfaces were clunky, slow, requiring extensive calibration. Mine was different. It learned, adapted, became more precise with use. Professor Daniels recognized its potential immediately. "Wilson, this could revolutionize assistive technology," he told me after reviewing my initial results. "People with paralysis could regain independence. The implications for prosthetics alone." His excitement fueled mine. I stopped attending parties, declined dates, lived on energy drinks and granola bars. My social media accounts gathered digital dust while I refined algorithms and tested neural response patterns. During winter break of junior year, I converted our home's guest room into a makeshift lab. That's when Dad first took notice. "What exactly are you working on that's worth missing Christmas dinner?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. I explained, watching his eyes glaze over at the technical details until I mentioned Professor Daniels' estimate of potential applications. Medical technology. Prosthetics. His interest suddenly sharpened. "Have you thought about commercialization?" "Eventually," I said. "After more testing and peer review." "It's not ready yet." Dad nodded thoughtfully. "You'd need better equipment for serious development." "Make me a list." 2 weeks later, $30,000 worth of cutting-edge equipment arrived. Dad presented the contract as a formality. "Just covering the investment," he explained as I signed. "Standard practice." I barely read it, too excited by the high-end signal processors and neural mapping tools. With this equipment, I made more progress in 3 months than I had in the previous year. By spring break, I had a working prototype. By summer, I had refined the algorithm to 95% accuracy, unheard of in the field. When I returned to MIT for senior year, Professor Daniels connected me with researchers at Massachusetts General Hospital for preliminary medical testing. "This could help thousands of people, Jess," he said. "I've never seen anything like it." I worked harder, driven by the possibilities. That's when the migraines started, blinding pain from too little sleep and too much screen time. I missed classes to meet deadlines. My grades slipped in courses unrelated to my research. Sarah confronted me one night after finding me passed out at my desk. "You're killing yourself for this algorithm," she said, forcing a sandwich into my hands. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" "It's worth it," I insisted. "You don't understand what this could mean." "I understand you're going to end up in the hospital before graduation." She wasn't entirely wrong. By the time I went home for winter break of senior year, I was exhausted, malnourished, and suffering from chronic headaches. But I also had a breakthrough algorithm that was already drawing attention from the medical technology community. That's when my father announced we were having a special family dinner. "Good news to celebrate," he said. I assumed it was about my brother's law school acceptance. Never imagined the good news was that he'd been negotiating behind my back to sell my life's work. That night, after the disastrous dinner, I locked myself in my bedroom and called Sarah, my hands still shaking. "He can't do this," she insisted after I explained the situation. "It's your intellectual property. The contract gives him ownership rights," I said, pulling out the document I'd stupidly signed. "I just read the fine print. It specifies that any developments made using the equipment belong to the investor until the investment is repaid." "That's your dad. He's not some venture capitalist." "Tell that to him," I said bitterly. "He's already negotiated the sale." "You need a lawyer," Sarah said. "With what money?" "Everything I have is in my research." There was a long pause before Sarah said, "My couch is free if you need somewhere to go." The next morning, while my family slept, I packed what I could carry: clothes, my laptop, and the notebooks containing my original research. The algorithm itself was already backed up on secure servers, the one thing Dad couldn't access without my passwords. I left a note: "You can sell the equipment. You can't sell me." The train ride to Boston was a blur. I remember staring out the window, watching the winter landscape rush by, wondering how my own father could betray me so completely. Had it always been about the money for him? Had he ever believed in me, or just in what he could profit from my work? Sarah was waiting at South Station, her face full of concern. "You look terrible," she said, hugging me. "Thanks," I managed a weak smile. Just what every girl wants to hear. "Have you slept at all?" "Not really. I kept thinking there must be some way to stop this." Sarah helped me settle onto her couch in the apartment she shared with 2 other students. I spent the next week frantically researching legal options, calling patent attorneys who took pity on broke college students, searching for any loophole to challenge my father's right to sell my work. There weren't any. The contract was airtight, crafted by Dad's firm. At 19, despite my academic achievements, I'd been legally naive. A week after I left home, Dad called. "This little tantrum needs to end," he said when I answered. "Come home, Jess. The deal with Greenwood is done." "You had no right," I said, my voice breaking. "I had every legal right," he corrected. "And I'm acting in your best interest." $250,000 is a substantial start for someone your age. It's worth millions, Dad. Potentially billions with the right applications. He scoffed. "Now you're being ridiculous. This is exactly why I made this decision. You have no concept of real-world valuation. The neural interface could revolutionize medical technology. It could help paralyzed people regain mobility. It could fail completely," he interrupted. "Technology startups have a 90% failure rate. I secured you a guaranteed return." I hung up, tears streaming down my face. 6 months later, Greenwood Technologies announced a revolutionary neural interface technology. My technology. They'd made superficial changes, but I recognized my work in every line of code, every performance metric, every potential application they highlighted. Their stock jumped 22% in a single day on the announcement. Meanwhile, I was working night shifts at a Cambridge convenience store, trying to pay rent while finishing my degree. The unfairness of it burned like acid in my stomach every time I saw Greenwood mentioned in tech news. Dad called occasionally, his voice dripping with condescension. "The money's still available, Jess," he would say. "Stop being stubborn." I never touched a penny of that $250,000. It sat in an account, blood money for my stolen future. Have you ever had something precious taken from you by someone who was supposed to protect you? That feeling of helplessness mixed with rage is like nothing else. But here's what I learned: sometimes the best revenge isn't immediate. Sometimes it requires patience. In 2008, Greenwood partnered with a medical device company to implement my neural interface in prosthetic limbs. I watched their press conference from the break room of the convenience store, fighting back tears as the CEO, James Peterson, took credit for a breakthrough innovation that will change countless lives. "That should be you up there," Sarah said, finding me later that night at her apartment, surrounded by printouts of Greenwood's technical specifications. "It will be," I said quietly. "Someday." I graduated with honors despite everything, and immediately received job offers from major tech companies. I turned them all down, which made Dad apoplectic. "Google offered you how much?" he demanded during one of our rare phone calls. "And you declined? Have you lost your mind?" "I have other plans," I said vaguely. "More pipe dreams," he sighed. "Jessica, at some point you need to accept reality. Reality was that I took a position at a struggling startup in Silicon Valley instead, working as a junior developer for half what Google had offered. The company made niche assistive technology products, nothing revolutionary, but it gave me access to the industry from the inside. I lived in a cramped Oakland apartment with 2 roommates, using most of my salary to pay off student loans and save whatever was left. Nights and weekends were spent studying business, patents, and corporate structuring. I read everything I could find about intellectual property law and corporate acquisitions. All while watching Greenwood's valuation climb to $600 million on the back of my technology. My mother called occasionally, always tiptoeing around the real issues. "Your father asks about you," she'd say. "Does he?" I'd respond coolly. "He's proud of you, in his way." His way being the problem. She'd sigh. "He was trying to protect you, Jessica. He was trying to control me." There's a difference. These conversations always ended the same way, with Mom defending Dad, me refusing to forgive, and neither of us feeling any better afterward. Meanwhile, I was building connections in Silicon Valley. My work at the startup caught attention, and I began receiving invitations to industry events and innovation conferences. I met venture capitalists, patent attorneys, and fellow developers who had been burned by larger companies. Sarah visited me during one of her breaks from medical school. "So this is the revenge plan?" she asked, looking around my tiny apartment. "Living in poverty while stalking Greenwood Technologies online." I smiled and pulled out a notebook filled with diagrams and code. "This is the revenge plan." I showed her the new algorithm I'd been developing, a complementary technology to my original work, but with significant improvements. The neural interface that Greenwood is using, my original algorithm, requires substantial computing power, and has limitations in signal processing speed, I explained. This new approach reduces the processing requirements by 80% while improving accuracy. Sarah looked confused. "But if they stole your original work, couldn't they just steal this too?" "Not if I protect it properly this time." I pointed to a stack of legal documents on my desk. Patent applications, filed in my name through a law firm that specializes in protecting independent inventors. And I'm not doing this alone anymore. I introduced her to Brian Anderson, another MIT graduate who had joined me in the project. Together, we were developing what would eventually become the foundation of Nexus Dynamics. "We're staying carefully outside Greenwood's patent boundaries," Brian explained. "Their legal team is aggressive about protecting their intellectual property, or should I say, Jess's intellectual property that they stole. The irony is infuriating," I added. "But it also creates an opportunity. They're so focused on protecting what they have that they're not innovating beyond it. We are." During Thanksgiving that year, I made a brief, tense visit home. Dad cornered me in his study. "I hear you're working for some failing startup instead of Google," he said, disapproval evident in his tone. "The startup is doing fine," I replied. "Greenwood's stock hit a new high last week," he mentioned casually. "They're worth almost $1 billion now. You could have been part of something real." I bit my tongue, thinking of the code waiting on my laptop, of the plans taking shape. "I am part of something real, Dad. You just can't see it yet." He shook his head. "When are you going to stop punishing me for making a smart business decision? That money is still sitting there, gaining interest. Some things aren't about money. Everything is ultimately about money, Jessica. The sooner you learn that, the happier you'll be." I left the next morning, more determined than ever. Dad didn't understand that this wasn't about happiness. It wasn't even really about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was rightfully mine and proving that his worldview was fundamentally flawed. If you're enjoying this story of determination against all odds, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of justice served. In 2014, I formally founded Nexus Dynamics with Sarah and Brian. We operated out of a converted warehouse in Palo Alto, scraping by on small contracts, and the first round of angel investments. Our mission was clear: develop the next generation of neural interface technology that would make Greenwood's system, my stolen system, look obsolete. Every small victory felt significant. Our first successful prototype test. Our first minor contract with a research hospital. Each step forward was a silent rebuttal to my father's dismissal of my abilities. "We need more funding," Brian said one night as we worked late, the glow of computer screens illuminating our tired faces. "The angel money won't last forever." "I know," I admitted. "But we're not ready for major venture capital yet. We need proof of concept that's impossible to ignore." Sarah, who had completed medical school and now consulted for us part-time while doing her residency, pointed to the neural response graphs on my screen. "That looks pretty impossible to ignore to me." She was right. Our preliminary results were promising, better than promising. Our new interface was responding with 40% less latency than Greenwood's commercial product, using a fraction of the processing power. "We need to document everything meticulously," I insisted. "Every test, every improvement, every line of code. When we go public with this, Greenwood will come after us with everything they have." "Let them," Brian said with a grin. "Their technology is already looking outdated compared to ours." Dad called that Christmas, his tone surprisingly conciliatory. "Your mother misses you," he said. "We both do." "I've been busy," I replied, sandpaper in my voice. "With your startup, yes. Your mother follows the tech blogs." There was an awkward pause before he continued, "It sounds like you're doing interesting work." "We are. Jessica." He hesitated. "I know you think I betrayed you. But everything I did was to secure your future." "You secured Greenwood's future with my work," I corrected him. "And now I'm building something better." He sighed heavily. "You've always been stubborn. Just like me." "I'm nothing like you," I said, ending the call. But his words haunted me. Was I becoming like him, so focused on the end goal that I was willing to sacrifice everything else? I looked around my sparse apartment, at the takeout containers and unwashed coffee mugs, at the social invitations I'd declined stacked in the corner. Was this revenge worth what it was costing me? Then I remembered the look on Peterson's face during that Greenwood press conference, taking credit for my years of sacrifice and innovation. Yes, I decided. It was worth it. In 2014, Nexus Dynamics was more than just an idea scribbled in notebooks. It was a legitimate startup with a dedicated team of 6 engineers, operating from a converted warehouse in Palo Alto. The space was nothing luxurious: concrete floors, exposed pipes, desks we'd assembled ourselves from discount store components, but it was ours. Our company mission statement, printed on a banner hanging above our workstations, read simply, "Connecting minds, expanding possibilities." A bit on the nose, don't you think? Brian joked when we hung it. "Sometimes the obvious statement is the right one," I replied. We developed complementary technologies to my original algorithm, carefully staying outside Greenwood's patent boundaries while improving upon my initial work in ways their engineers hadn't imagined. It was delicate, challenging work, innovating around the edges of my own stolen technology without infringing on what were now legally Greenwood's patents. Our first year was lean. We survived on small contracts with research institutions and preliminary funding from angel investors who believed in our vision. Most nights I slept on a cot in our makeshift lab, too exhausted to make the trip back to my apartment. Dad called it playing entrepreneur when we spoke, which was rarely. "Still throwing your life away?" he asked during one Thanksgiving call. "Greenwood's worth almost $1 billion now. You could have been part of something real." I bit my tongue. He didn't know I was building something far more valuable than money, leverage. Sarah visited whenever her medical residency allowed. One night, she found me asleep at my desk, surrounded by circuit diagrams and code printouts. "This is becoming a pattern," she said, shaking me awake. "You need actual rest, Jess." "I'll rest when Greenwood is paying us licensing fees," I mumbled, rubbing my eyes. "Revenge won't mean much if you're too dead to enjoy it," she countered, pulling me toward the door. "Real food. Real sleep. Doctor's orders." Over late-night tacos at a 24-hour diner, Sarah asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What happens if this doesn't work? If Nexus fails?" I stared into my coffee. "It won't. Jess. Reality check. Most startups fail." "We're not most startups," I insisted. "We have something they don't." "What's that?" I smiled thinly. "Righteous fury as a motivator." The breakthrough came in 2016. I'd been working on a new approach to signal processing, trying to reduce the computational demands of neural interfaces. Traditional methods, including my original algorithm now used by Greenwood, required substantial processing power, limiting real-world applications. Late one night, after everyone else had gone home, I tried a completely different approach. Instead of increasing processing capacity to handle complex neural signals, what if we could simplify the signals themselves without losing fidelity? I coded for 14 straight hours, emerging bleary-eyed but triumphant as dawn broke over Silicon Valley. "Brian," I called the moment he walked in. "I need you to test this." He looked skeptical as I explained my approach, but his expression changed to disbelief as the first test results appeared on screen. "That can't be right," he muttered, running the diagnostics again. "The system load is at 20% of baseline, but response accuracy is improved." I nodded, too exhausted for words but grinning like a maniac. "Jess," he said slowly, "do you understand what this means?" I did. I'd developed an algorithm that dramatically reduced the processing power needed for neural interfaces. Combined with our new signal amplification method, we had created a system that made Greenwood's technology look like outdated, clunky hardware from another era. We worked frantically to document, test, and refine the breakthrough. Patent applications were filed immediately, with every possible variation protected. When we demonstrated the technology to our existing investors, their reaction was immediate. "How soon can you scale this?" one asked. "We need a proper funding round," I answered. "Series A. At least $20 million to build out production-ready systems and complete clinical trials." They made introductions to Benchmark Capital, one of Silicon Valley's premier venture capital firms. Our pitch meeting was scheduled for the following month. I spent weeks preparing, refining our presentation, rehearsing answers to potential questions. The night before the meeting, I barely slept, going over every detail in my mind. The Benchmark offices were sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. I felt out of place in my one good suit, clutching my laptop like a lifeline as we were led into the conference room. 6 partners sat around the table, their expressions neutral as we set up our demonstration. I took a deep breath, channeling the confidence my father had always projected in business settings. "Neural interface technology isn't new," I began. "But what we've developed at Nexus Dynamics changes everything about how these systems work." For the next 30 minutes, I explained our breakthrough, demonstrated our prototype, and outlined our go-to-market strategy. I watched their expressions shift from polite interest to genuine excitement as they understood the implications. "Your background is in neural algorithm design, correct?" one partner asked. "Yes," I replied carefully. "I began developing neural interfaces during my time at MIT." "The technology seems similar to Greenwood's platform," another noted. "How do you differentiate?" I'd been waiting for this question. "Our approach fundamentally rethinks signal processing requirements. While Greenwood's system demands substantial computing power, ours reduces those requirements by 80% while improving accuracy and response time. We're not competing with Greenwood, we're making their technology obsolete. What I didn't say, what I couldn't say without risking legal repercussions, was that I knew exactly how to improve on Greenwood's system because it had originally been my creation. 2 weeks later, we secured $25 million in series of funding, led by Benchmark Capital. Articles appeared in TechCrunch and Wired. Nexus Dynamics, the future of neural interface technology, one headline proclaimed. Dad called the night the funding was announced. I'm impressed, he admitted grudgingly. Maybe you've landed on your feet after all. Thanks for the vote of confidence, I replied, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath. You know, I still have connections at Greenwood. They might be interested in acquiring your company. Could be quite profitable for you. I nearly laughed at the irony. I'm not interested in selling. Don't be short-sighted. Every company has its price. Some things aren't for sale, Dad. You taught me that lesson. I hung up, staring out at the San Francisco skyline from our new offices. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. We had the technology. We had the funding. Now we needed market share and Greenwood's attention. For the next 2 years, we expanded aggressively. We hired top engineers, secured additional patents, and began forming partnerships with medical device manufacturers. Each press release was carefully crafted to highlight comparisons with Greenwood's technology without directly challenging their patents. By 2018, Nexus Dynamics was valued at $300 million. We were eating into Greenwood's market share, our technology increasingly the industry standard for new applications. That's when Greenwood's CEO, James Peterson, finally requested a meeting. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived. I'll never forget walking into Greenwood's San Francisco headquarters. The gleaming glass building screamed success, success built on my stolen work. In the lobby, a display case showcased their breakthrough neural interface technology. My technology. My heart raced as the elevator climbed to the executive floor. Sarah squeezed my hand. Ready, she whispered. I nodded, my face a mask of calm despite the storm inside me. For years of work, planning, and patience had led to this moment. James Peterson was waiting in the boardroom, flanked by 3 attorneys and their chief technology officer. His smile was professional but wary as we entered with our legal team. Jessica Wilson, he said, extending his hand. Your reputation precedes you. Likewise, I replied coolly, my grip firm. These are our attorneys, he gestured to the suited men beside him, and Dr. Marcus Chen, our CTO. Dr. Chen nodded, his expression unreadable. I wondered if he knew exactly where Greenwood's core technology had come from. Let's cut to the chase, Peterson continued once we were seated. We've been following Nexus Dynamics' progress with interest. Your signal processing innovations are impressive. Thank you, I said simply. We're interested in acquiring Nexus Dynamics, he stated, leaning forward. We're prepared to offer $450 million. It's a generous valuation. I smiled, feeling a surge of satisfaction. This was exactly what I'd anticipated. I'm not here to sell, Mr. Peterson. His confidence faltered. Then why are we meeting? I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. Because of this. On screen was the first of hundreds of documents we'd compiled over years, internal Greenwood emails discussing the origins of their neural interface technology, admitting they knew it had been acquired under questionable circumstances. I scrolled slowly, allowing him to read. Where did you get these? He demanded, his voice tight. Keep reading, I said quietly. Next came communications with my father revealing he'd never had legal right to sell my work. He wasn't the inventor, merely the financier of equipment, and the contract had been fundamentally misrepresented. These could be fabricated, one of the attorneys interjected. They could be, I agreed. But they're not. And the SEC and federal prosecutors will determine that quickly enough when they review the originals. Peterson's face had drained of color. I continued to the most damning evidence, modified code segments where Greenwood engineers had attempted to obscure the algorithm's origins, but left telltale traces of my original work. Dr. Chen knows what he's looking at, I said, glancing at their CTO, whose expression had shifted from neutral to alarmed. Don't you, Doctor? You recognized my coding style immediately when you began working with the algorithm. Those comments in the margin. The recursive function structure. That's how I was taught to code at MIT. Chen looked at Peterson, then back at me. It has distinctive characteristics. We have 3 options, I said calmly. 1. I file a lawsuit exposing everything, which will crater your stock price and trigger SEC investigations. 2. You can try to fight, but our legal team estimates that would cost you at least $2 billion in damages and lost value. Or 3. We can structure a merger where Nexus takes controlling interest. Peterson's jaw tightened. This is blackmail. This is accountability, I corrected. You built a billion-dollar company on stolen technology. I'm simply reclaiming what's mine. He glanced at his attorneys, who were furiously whispering among themselves. Give us the room, he said suddenly. The lawyers looked reluctant but eventually gathered their materials and left, along with Dr. Chen. When the door closed, Peterson's professional veneer cracked. What do you really want, Wilson? I told you. A merger with Nexus in control. He laughed bitterly. You're a 27-year-old running a startup. You think you can manage a billion-dollar public company? I created the technology that made it worth $1 billion, I shot back. When I was 19. Peterson stared at me for a long moment. We didn't know, he finally said. About your father's methods. The technology was presented to us as legitimately acquired. But you suspected, I countered. Those emails make that clear. He didn't deny it. What would the merger terms look like? Nexus shareholders receive 62% of the combined entity. I become CEO. You can stay on as chairman if you want, that's negotiable. We rebrand as NeuroSync. And the evidence stays private, assuming we reach an agreement. He rubbed his temples. I need to discuss this with my board. You have 1 week, I said, standing. After that, we go to the SEC. As we walked out, Sarah whispered, that was incredible. I didn't respond until we were outside, the San Francisco air cool on my flushed face. Then I started laughing, relief, triumph, and disbelief all bubbling up at once. We did it, I gasped between laughs. We actually did it. The negotiations lasted 3 months. Greenwood tried every tactic to reduce Nexus's control, offering more money for a straight acquisition, suggesting a 50-50 partnership, even threatening countersuits. But they knew we held the stronger position. In the end, Greenwood agreed to our terms, a merger where Nexus shareholders received 62% of the combined entity, with me as CEO. The press called it a brilliant strategic consolidation. Tech blogs praised the complementary technologies that would now work together instead of competing. Few knew it was actually a carefully orchestrated corporate takeover, my reclamation of what had been stolen. If you've ever been underestimated or had your dreams dismissed by someone who should have supported you, hit that like button. Sometimes the best revenge is massive success. The day the merger was announced, I called my father. I saw the news, he said before I could speak. Congratulations. I always knew you had potential. The casual praise, as if he'd supported me all along, made my blood boil. Did you know Greenwood was planning to retain me as CEO? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Smart move on their part, he replied, missing the implication entirely. Though you'll need experienced executives around you. Running a public company is very different from a startup. No, Dad, I said slowly. Smart move on my part. Nexus is acquiring controlling interest in Greenwood. I'm taking back what you stole from me." Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear him processing this reversal of fortune. "I didn't steal anything," he finally said, his voice defensive. "I made a business decision." "With something that wasn't yours," I interrupted. "The first board meeting is next month. I'm reviewing all acquisition records going back 10 years. Including the original sale documentation." "You wouldn't," he said, his voice suddenly hoarse. "It would ruin me." The firm would be deeply interested to know one of their partners used firm resources to defraud his own daughter. As would the SEC. Another long silence, then, "What do you want?" The question hung in the air. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? An apology? I'd been working toward this moment for so long that I hadn't fully considered what would satisfy me once I had the upper hand. "I want you to admit what you did," I finally said. "To me, to Mom, to Ashley. A full confession. Then I want you to donate the $250,000 plus all accumulated interest to MIT's scholarship fund for underprivileged engineering students. And if I refuse, then I'll ensure every business publication knows exactly how Greenwood acquired its foundational technology. Your choice." He didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice had lost its usual confidence. "When?" "This weekend. I'll fly home Friday." 3 days later, I sat at my parents' dining room table, the same one where he'd announced the sale 8 years earlier. The same fine china was set out, though no one was eating. My mother looked confused, Ashley uncomfortable, and my father diminished somehow. "I asked you all here because I have something to tell you," Dad began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Something I did that I'm not proud of." He explained how he'd seen commercial potential in my neural interface algorithm, how he'd consulted with lawyers at his firm about the equipment contract, how he'd approached Greenwood behind my back. "I thought I was protecting her," Dad said, his voice breaking. "I didn't believe the technology would amount to anything significant. I thought the money would give her security." "You didn't believe in me," I corrected. "There's a difference." "No, I didn't," he admitted, surprising me with his candor. "I saw it as a school project, not what it became." Mom was crying silently. "Robert, how could you? That was Jessica's work." "I thought I knew better," he said simply. "I was wrong." Ashley looked at me with new understanding. "This is why you left? Why you barely visit?" I nodded. "It wasn't just about the technology. It was the betrayal." Dad cleared his throat. "The merger announcement made it clear what's happened. You've outmaneuvered Greenwood and me." He attempted a smile. "You're a better businessperson than I ever was." "That's not the point," I said sharply. "This wasn't a game. This was my life's work." "I know that now," he replied quietly. "And I'm sorry, Jessica. Truly sorry." The next day, he made the donation to MIT, $338,752.18. I didn't press charges or expose him publicly. His confession to our family was punishment enough. The man who prided himself on financial acumen had sold a multi-billion-dollar technology for pennies on the dollar. The father who claimed to want security for his daughter had instead stolen her greatest achievement. As I prepared to leave, Dad asked to speak privately in his study. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began awkwardly. "About me not believing in you." I waited, saying nothing. "It wasn't that I didn't think you were brilliant," he continued. "I've always known that. It was that I didn't understand what you'd created. The technical aspects were beyond me, so I reduced it to dollars and cents." "That was wrong." "Yes, it was," I agreed. "I want you to know I'm proud of you," he said, meeting my eyes directly. Not because of the money or the company, but because you fought for what was yours. You didn't give up. I studied him, searching for the manipulation, the angle. But for once, he seemed genuine. I learned that from you, actually, I said finally. The determination. Just applied it differently. He smiled sadly. I deserve that. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Jessica. The company, NeuroSync. I want you to know I'll be buying shares. Not to interfere, he added quickly, just to support what you're building. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. But it was a start. Today, NeuroSync is valued at just over $5 billion. Our interfaces are used in medical devices, gaming systems, and next-generation prosthetics. We've helped thousands of people regain mobility and independence. The technology that was once just theoretical has transformed lives, just as I'd imagined it could when I was working through the night in my MIT dorm room. Dad and I have a strained relationship, built on cautious respect rather than trust. He sends articles about the company sometimes, with brief notes, impressive quarter, or saw your CNN interview. Small acknowledgments of my success. I respond with similar brevity, a détente years in the making. Last Christmas, I visited my parents' home for the first time in years. The holiday was awkward but civil, with Mom trying too hard, and Ashley asking too many questions about Silicon Valley celebrities. After dinner, Dad asked to speak privately in his study. I found this while cleaning out some files, he said, handing me a yellowed notebook. My original sketches for the neural interface algorithm, dated 2007. I flipped through the pages, memories flooding back, the excitement of discovery, the pride of creation, the endless possibilities I'd imagined. You kept it? I asked, surprised. I kept it, he admitted. Even after the sale. Something told me it might be important someday. I traced my fingers over equations I'd scribbled in the margins, early iterations of what would become revolutionary technology. Thank you, I said simply. He nodded, then said the words I'd waited years to hear, I'm sorry, Jess. And I'm proud of what you've built, what you rebuilt after I destroyed it. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was genuine. As I drove away that night, I realized that revenge hadn't been my true motivation. What I'd really wanted was recognition, acknowledgement that my creation mattered, that my vision had value. I keep that notebook in my office now, a reminder of where it all began, and what was nearly lost. Sometimes visitors ask about it, and I simply say it's where a $5 billion idea was born. What I don't tell them is that it's also where I learned the most valuable lesson of my life: no one has the right to sell your dreams, not even family. Especially not family. The experience changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'm more cautious with legal agreements, certainly. But I'm also more determined to help others protect their innovations. Last week, I established the Future Innovators Trust, a foundation that provides legal protection and business guidance to young inventors. The first initiative: free patent filing and contract review for college students, ensuring no one else has their creation sold out from under them during family dinner. At our last board meeting, I proposed allocating 2% of our annual profits to the trust. When someone questioned the business rationale, I shared my story, the full version, including my father's betrayal and my years-long quest to reclaim what was mine. This isn't charity, I explained. It's insurance for the future. Somewhere right now, a student is developing something revolutionary. I want them to have the protection I didn't. The proposal passed unanimously. Sarah, now a successful neurosurgeon who still serves on our board, cornered me after the meeting. You've come a long way from that girl crying on my couch, she said with a smile. I still have the occasional cry, I admitted. Just in a much nicer office. We laughed, but her expression turned serious. Are you happy, Jess? You won. You got everything back and more. But are you actually happy? It was a question I'd been asking myself lately. The drive for justice had consumed nearly a decade of my life. What came after revenge? I'm getting there, I told her honestly. Building something positive from all of this, the foundation, the medical applications, that brings me more satisfaction than the takeover ever did. And it's true. Watching videos of people using our neural interfaces to control prosthetic limbs, seeing children with disabilities gaining independence through our technology, that's the real victory. Not the market capitalization, or the corner office, or the vindication. Because some things truly aren't for sale. And those that are stolen can sometimes be reclaimed, with patience, persistence, and the right kind of revenge. If my story resonated with you, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more stories about justice, resilience, and fighting for what's rightfully yours. Drop a comment below about a time you stood up for yourself against the odds. I read every comment, and would love to hear your stories. Remember, your dreams are worth fighting for, no matter who tries to take them from you. Even if it's the people who are supposed to protect you the most. This is Jessica Wilson, signing off. Thank you for listening to my story.